Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here, my next YouTube video. This one's going to be my first video about Star Wars Rebels. Now, obviously the reason I'm doing this is because when the show comes out I am going to, at the very least, review the first couple of episodes to see if I like it. But the plan is that I'm going to review this series. Because obviously Core is coming to an end and I want to make sure that when it does, that even though I'll continue to do Avatar videos and other stuff, that I will have other series to review. And so TMNT is obviously going to be a thing, Star Wars Rebels, and there's some other stuff that I'll talk about in other videos. But yeah, Star Wars Rebels, the premiere is October 3rd. It's going to start off with a two-parter, effectively a kind of TV movie called Spark of Rebellion. But what this video is going to be about is me reviewing the 4 shorts that they've released for this show, which, as far as I'm aware, they're not just from episodes of the show, they are actually specific shorts. Like, these web shorts are the only place you're going to see these clips, I think. But at the same time, they look like they potentially are part of episodes, but I'm not sure. But I'm going to review these shorts, and also I just finished reading the prequel novel, A New Dawn, and I'll talk about that as well. So first of all, the shorts. The first one is called The Machine and the Ghost, I think, or A Machine and the Ghost. And this is the clip introducing us to Kanan, our Jedi Knight. Though he's not quite a Jedi Knight, he's just a Jedi Force user, you know, has a lightsaber. Hera, captain of the ship called the Ghost, and Chopper, their astromech droid, who is made from spare parts. Pretty interesting clip overall, probably my favourite of the few, just because the ship, the Ghost, is a really cool ship, and especially after reading the novel, Kanan and Hera are definitely the characters I'm most interested about going into the show, just because the idea with Kanan is that I'm obviously going to spoil some aspects of A New Dawn, so if you're going to read the book, definitely not the video for you perhaps, but Kanan obviously survived Order 66. His Jedi Master beforehand was Depa Billaba, and yeah, he was very young when Order 66 happened. He was like 14, so he hasn't finished his training, so he's not a Jedi Knight as such. He's just basically a Jedi Padawan who has a little bit of training from a master. So you sort of see where the thing comes in. You have a fairly inexperienced Jedi, and that's when Ezra comes into play as, you know, another Force user, and Kanan kind of has to become the role of master without actually being a master himself. So it's going to be very interesting. But Hera obviously is the person who basically brings the group together. She's the one who, in many ways, what they're setting up at least seems to be that she, in many ways, is going to start the rebellion as such, maybe, or she's going to be a big part of that. But again, that's what we're not really sure about. Like, is the Rebel Alliance a thing already that this group will then join, or are these the kind of start of it? That's what we're not really sure about just yet. There's also the whole Bail Organa thing, and where does that come into play? Because the setting of Star Wars Rebels is going to be 14 years after Revenge of the Sith, which means that Luke and Leia would be 14. So technically, those characters are around in this universe for us to see. Obi-Wan is going to be in the series at some point as well. We don't know, like, is he physically going to be there or just via like a hologram or something like that? But who knows? We'll have to see. But yeah, this first clip is just really interesting. You get some of the stuff that goes through these characters in the novel, that Kanan and Hera are kind of close friends. There's definite hints at like some sort of romance happening sometime down the line, which is really, I find really interesting, just because, you know, he's a Jedi, but because of the situation he is in, he's not part of the Jedi Order, because that's the case. And then also, as you probably see from some of the clips, from the trailers and stuff like that, he doesn't use his lightsaber as much. I assume some of the early stuff with him is going to revolve around him finally revealing himself to everyone as being like a Force user Jedi Knight, and he's actively going to rebel against the Empire as a Jedi. So he sounds really interesting as a character. And Hera obviously is the one who's brought the group together. She's the captain of the ship, and is going to be the kind of mother figure of the group as well. Then Chopper obviously is a really interesting astromech. Just the clip of them it's basically that kind of a New Hope clip with as Han and Luke take out some TIE fighters, but this time it's Hera, Chopper, and Kanan who take them out. It's just a really nice clip. Second one is called, I think, Art Attack, and this is about our kind of Mandalorian girl character, Sabine. Not quite sure how old she is. Hera and Kanan are like 28 or something like that. I think Hera's a little bit younger than Kanan, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, either way, they're like in their mid-20s. Sabine looks like she's kind of older teens, like 16, 17, 18 maybe a little bit older. But yeah, definitely interesting just with the pink Mandalorian armor. You kind of wonder, like, does she have any relation to, like the planet Mandalore, getting the armor, the moon Concordia, I think, was where the Mandalorians are from, and the Clone Wars and stuff like that. Where'd she get the armor from, or is she just like a fan of that? Either way, it's really interesting. She's seems to be basically a graffiti artist primarily, but she kind of has that artistic kind of side to her, in that the explosion goes off and she's more interested in it because of the colors and stuff like that. So she's pretty interesting. Seems quite acrobatic and stuff like that. Doesn't have all the gadgets that say Boba Fett or something like that would have. So it's going to be interesting to see what the backstory is with regards to where she gets the armor from and stuff like that, if they give us her backstory, of course. Next one is called Entanglement, I think, and it involves Zeb, our kind of bruiser character. Can't remember what species he is off the top of my head. I don't think they said it in the clip. But yeah, the idea is just that he's our kind of not so smart kind of guy who's always up for a fight and stuff like that, and he has to go to a meeting point, goes to the wrong alleyway, fight breaks out, and you just see him like cracking jokes with Kanan over the radio as he's taking out this whole crew of stormtroopers and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. Definitely, like, he's the one character I'm like, he's probably at the bottom of my list in terms of the like characters going into the show. Just like, what are they going to do with him? He seems a bit like basic as a character, but I assume they'll do something with him to make him interesting. Final one is like I think called Property of Ezra, and Ezra's obviously our 14-year-old force sensitive kid who's a kind of thief, you know, con artist type guy, as we see in this clip. TIE fighter crashes and he just steals all the stuff while conning the pilot there, and then he kind of runs away, fires his really cool kind of like slingshot type thing that fires the kind of sparks at people. So that's pretty interesting. And the obvious like connection is that like Luke's 14, Ezra's 14, Leia's 14. There's potential that maybe Ezra meets Luke and something happens there or something like that, but I don't know if they're going to introduce Luke as a character. You probably doubt it, apart from maybe like a cameo or something like that. But either way, Ezra seems very interesting. You can see that he, like kind of Anakin in The Phantom Menace, he kind of didn't know he had the Force, but he knew there was something special about him, and that he was the first human pod racer, and that kind of got that kind of Force sensitivity out, and that he could sense when things were about to happen and avoid them in the pod race. While Ezra, we see here avoid blaster fire from this TIE fighter, which normal humans couldn't do, and so that's an interesting idea. Just that there's going to be this master-apprentice relationship between Kanan and Ezra, but as I said before, Kanan isn't a Master Jedi. He really hasn't practiced being a Jedi in years, so what happens with that? That's fascinating to me. But yeah, they're the clips. So let's go into a little bit into the book A New Dawn. This is obviously a full-on novel. I think this is the first novel released that's part of this new Star Wars take on canon, where everything that comes out from here on out is considered 100% canon. It's been decided by Lucasfilm completely internally. Because George Lucas isn't involved anymore, there's not that split in canon where there's stuff he did, there's stuff he only had a minor hand in, and all this other sort of stuff. In this case, everything's canon. And Dave Filoni is basically our new George Lucas in a way, and he obviously helped heavily with this book as well. Written by John Jackson Miller, who previously wrote the Kenobi book plus some other ones. The basic gist of this is that it's set 6 years before the events of the series, so it's set 8 years after Revenge of the Sith, which means that Kanan at this point is like 23 years old in this book, and he effectively has been on the run for that long, and the situation that he finds himself in, Kanan's the main character, of course, is that he's been going from planet to planet, getting all these little odd jobs and stuff like that, and he's just tried his best to kind of get a normal life out of this sort of thing. And he's locked his lightsaber away, he's tried not to use the Force as much as possible, and really, you find out he's a bit of a kind of like, they don't let him say like he's a heavy drinker, but like he likes going to bars and stuff like that, and get involved in bar fights and stuff like that. You see that he's really kind of in many ways embraced the fact that he's not kind of held down by some of these more crazy Jedi philosophies, but that he still kind of remembers it a lot. And early on in the book, you get a lot of flashback to him when he was younger, and I think his real name is Caleb Dune, and he's changed it to Kanan. I can't remember his new second name off the top of my head, but his new name's Kanan, but his name as a Jedi Knight was Caleb Dune. And yeah, it's pretty interesting because you find out that effectively, his strength as a character is that he's a kind of strategist, more or less. That's his strength as a Jedi Knight. That's why Depa Billaba kind of took him on as her apprentice, and that she saw that kind of strategy side to him. And they kind of get that across when he goes to a kind of a session with Obi-Wan Kenobi during the Clone Wars, and they're asking questions about the Jedi beacon, obviously the beacon that eventually Obi-Wan uses to inform all the Jedi to stay away from Coruscant and to go into hiding. And you get the idea that the beacon at a base level is to inform all Jedi to return to Coruscant for some major emergency, but Kanan is the one who asked the idea, could it also be said to be used to keep people away? And this gives Obi-Wan the kind of idea that maybe it could be, if something really went wrong on Coruscant, to just keep people away. And so I like that setup, that he's clever enough to kind of think outside the box and stuff like that. That's nice. And you just they cut back to stuff like this a few times throughout the book. Him getting advice from his master or something like that as the book kind of progresses, and just that he's remembering more and more of this stuff. Like, as stuff during the main plot of this novel gets more and more crazy, as he's kind of sucked more and more away from this kind of normal life he wants for himself, and more into kind of becoming a rebel with Hera. You see him kind of remember more and more of this stuff about being a Jedi, and he's forced to use the Force a little bit more. He doesn't use his lightsaber in the book, but there is a really nice scene where, towards the end, he's in a fight with the villain of this book, and he goes to take out his lightsaber and use it, but then he remembers, this is not the time. This will just get the Empire on their chase before they're ready, and so he holds back on that. And by the end of the book, the only person who knows that he actually is a former Jedi is Hera, but even then, she just knows that he can use the Force. She doesn't know about the lightsaber. And that's pretty interesting. It's just, this book really is all about the start of the kind of friendship connection between Hera and Kanan, and just the start of this group that we're going to meet in Rebels. We don't get introduced to Zeb or Sabine or Ezra, obviously. This is just about Hera and Kanan meeting, and then there's some other characters involved in the story and what actually happens itself. But just the character stuff between those two is really strong, because obviously straight away the second he meets her, he's super attracted to her and stuff like that. And you find out throughout the book that he's like really kind of cynical in a way, smart, always trying to crack some funny one-liners, and then he's always kind of trying to charm women and stuff like that. It's a really interesting take on a Jedi, because you really don't expect him to do that sort of thing, but he does. And by the end of the book, they definitely hint a lot at a romance between these two, and Hera even knows that he likes her a lot, but she's kind of so intent on starting this rebellion and rebelling against the Empire that she's not kind of, I suppose, in the mood of any sort of relationship or something like that. And maybe that will change over the course of Rebels, and this relationship will actually happen, which I hope they do make a change from the Clone Wars, and that they actually go heavily into some of the romances. Like, I'd like some romance to be in this Star Wars show, just because with Ahsoka and Lux and stuff like that, they teased it and teased it, didn't do anything with it, and the show came to an end and they hadn't done anything. I kind of just wish they'd go with it this time. Especially with the characters being older, like in their 20s, I think they should just go for it. And yeah, just by the end of the book, it's basically that he agrees to finally kind of move away from this ideal he had that he'd stay out of the way, he wasn't going to help anyone and stuff like that. And that's what kind of comes out throughout this book. As he's forced into this situation, he realizes that his base instinct, kind of as a Jedi, to always help people, come out more and more, and Hera kind of inspires that in him and brings that out. That's what I like. Now, another thing to say is that Kanan's the main character in this book. Hera's in it a lot and is basically the second main character. But while we're told Kanan's backstory, we are not told her backstory. We're not really told much, if anything, about why she's doing what she's doing, which is quite nice in that you get a lot of detail about Kanan's backstory, but nothing on her, and you really don't know why she's fully fighting against the Empire. You don't know a lot about like where she came from, where she got the ship from, and all these skills, but it's interesting for sure that they kind of have kept it that way. And yeah, in terms of the plot of the book, the plot of this thing basically revolves around two planets that are kind of mining planets, and they have this substance called thorolide in them that the Empire really wants to get a lot of their projects going. And obviously this is still kind of the first few years of the Empire being formed, and they're making all this production, like TIE fighters, the Death Star is still being produced and stuff like that. So they need all this thorolide. So they send this guy, Count Vidian, to the planet, and he's an efficiency expert, but he's also this kind of cyborg human guy, so he has all these kind of things like he can hear people really well, his eyes are like data recorders and stuff like that, and they go into his backstory and explain a lot about him. But he's a pretty cool villain because you see that as much as he's basically, this kind of advisor to the Emperor, like if someone like goes against him, like he goes to like a business and says you need to improve efficiency, and they're like, we can't do that, he just like kills them because in his mind that's the most efficient way to deal with them and stuff like that. And then he starts doing all this stuff like this factory is quite dangerous, maybe we should switch to droids, and he's like, no, stick with humans because if they fall into the acid they'll dissolve quicker than droids and stuff like that. And you're just like, whoa, this guy's really into efficiency. And it's a really just cool character stuff that they get across through him. And obviously there's a few battles that happen with him and the main group throughout and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. And then there's the main thing revolves around that he kind of begins to get played by this other guy that's high up with the Emperor, where he keeps demanding that the quotas go up for this thorolide and that you need more and more, and eventually it gets to the stage where they want triple what they originally asked for, and before the guy came they were already struggling to meet just like the original quota, and now they want 3 times as much. And so one of the other characters, Skelly, who's this kind of crazy kind of post-traumatic stress disorder, he's gone crazy after the Clone Wars veteran, knows that if they overmine the planet and use too much force with the bombs and stuff like that to get the thorolide out, they're going to crack the moon in 2 and just destroy. I think they'll destroy the moon. They'll crack it in 2, and because of the planet and the moon's kind of relationship, that they'll both destroy each other. Like the ecosystem of the planet will just be destroyed because the moon won't be there anymore and stuff like that. And so eventually you get to the stage where the villain decides to go through with this and just purposefully crack the moon open, so that I think the idea was that so it'll basically form all these kind of just clumps that they'll easily be able to go out and mine much more efficiently and get everything out of the planet, rather than having to safely mine into the planet and stuff like that, where it takes more time. And the main thing is just about Hera originally trying to stop it, plus some of the other characters, and then Kanan eventually gets involved to stop the planet being destroyed effectively. And it's a cool plot, and it kind of gets out the characters all together, and it just, as a way to bring Kanan and Hera together, it works really nicely. What else is there to say? Just that, yeah, it works really nicely. You can really see how Kanan and Hera kind of come together at the end, and really makes me excited for these two and their relationship as we go through the actual show when it starts. So that's all I really have to say about the book. I definitely recommend reading it. It's a pretty good book. Not the best. I still think Star Wars Plagueis is Darth Plagueis is probably the best book, Star Wars book I've read. But this is really solid book. I definitely recommend it, and I'm actually really excited going into Star Wars. Like, even though I much prefer the prequel kind of era to the original trilogy era, just the fact that this is still somewhat rooted in the prequel, I think is really going to make me enjoy this, and maybe it'll make me enjoy the original trilogy a lot more as well. But final thing to say, but just the Empire, you get a lot of stuff about them in this book, and that you really see the cruelty come out, and that they're all about efficiency. They're all about greed and stuff like this. It just really comes out here, and you can really see why they're the villain straight away, even in this early days. It's pretty good. But yeah, Star Wars Rebels, really excited for it. October 3rd, same day as Korra premieres. The premiere is coming out, so I'm also going to prioritize Korra for now, but I'll probably have my review of Star Wars Rebels out either the Friday the episode airs or Saturday. Probably Saturday, just because it's probably going to air at an odd time in America, and by the time I'm able to record, it'll probably be nighttime, so it'll probably be Saturday the 4th of October by the time I have my review of the opening episodes of Rebels. But yeah, that's been the video. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you're at all excited for Star Wars Rebels. But yeah, thanks for watching, and bye.